Trump's a wild card. He's a pro at negotiation. So I know that's a long-winded way, but that's what we're facing. And I think it's really going to hurt us. I think this is a bad move. This is as much about wealth preservation as it is about wealth growth. And then ultimately, this is a result of what's going on in the instability of the economy. Single family detached is a strong investment opportunity, given that they're not building more of it, given that interest rates are going to start coming down again. The game has changed.
There's going to be a massive issue with not enough single family homes. That is a guarantee going to happen, and those asset values of those types of properties will go up disproportionately to the market because of that. That's a good thing for us real estate investors. It's time to talk tariffs. It is March 4th, kind of a historic day. The tariffs are officially in place. People are naturally freaking out, although I think a little bit of the edges come off. I know I feel like a bit of the edges come off because, there's a 1 month where we got used to the idea, used to the concept, and so on and so forth. So very interesting. What are you seeing out there, Patrick? And what are your thoughts on these tariffs?
Well, listen, there was Ford released, there's a video, of course, of Ford standing in front of his podium at the microphone, threatening the U.S., saying, we're going to cut off your power. We're going to add a whole bunch of tariffs to what we ship you and we export. Here's a fundamental breakdown of that whole strategy. It kind of annoys the shit out of me because ultimately, JG, it's like you and I go out for an evening and some MMA fighter says, listen, step outside. And you go, yeah, well, I'm going to step outside. Well, listen, dude, I don't care how big you are or how adept you think you are. You're going to get your ass kicked by that MMA fighter. And Ford is standing in front of that podium as if he's a big deal. Now, think about it. The U.S. economy is arguably in that $25 to $30 trillion mark. Okay, so let's think about that. Ford's threats could be 100 billion, 150 billion. That is pocket change. Do you really think it's going to make a difference? However, to Canadians, it's going to kick our ass. And I'll tell you why. We export raw goods. So we're going to export, we're going to add tariffs to all the things that we export. Guess what? We import finished goods from the US. So what's that going to mean to us? We're going to export our raw materials. We're going to add tariffs. The US is going to put a lift on that. Then they're going to sell them back to us in terms of finished product. Now, I know that that's a kind of a generalization, but that's how it's going to go. So if you think things are expensive now, give it a couple of months at the most if this whole thing goes through or goes down the way Ford is saying it's going down. And it kind of annoys me because, he got voted in on a different platform. I'm not from Ontario, but now he's aligned with Trudeau, who is absolutely incompetent when it comes to negotiation. And I think a lot of this is just poor ability to negotiate. Trump's a wild card. He's a pro at negotiation. So I know that's a long-winded way, but that's what we're facing. And I think it's really going to hurt us. I think this is a bad move.
Yeah, it's interesting, Patrick. I'd love to think. So what do you think he should do then? Certainly not bend over and take it. That's for sure. You're not going to sit there and do nothing. You got to do something. So what would you do?
Well, let's think about that for a second, right? So if that MMA fighter that is calling you out and you know that you're going to get your butt kicked, what are you going to do? You're going to just talk to him nice. You're going to sit back, let him threaten, but not take any real action. So the point of it is sit down, have a conversation. You can't win this fight by you can't bully a bigger bully. Again, there's all sorts of metaphors and analogies that we can use. It was far better to get your ego, park it, and sit down with Trump and then actually look at what he's asking for. So he's having the conversation around border control. He's having the conversation around fentanyl. Just start there. Have a real responsible conversation rather than this random threat that is actually nonsensical. Now, I'm not saying it's right, by the way. I'm not suggesting that Trump is right and we're wrong in terms of the overall relationship, but there's no point in threatening Trump. Again, it's like taking a knife to a gunfight. It makes no sense.
It's definitely a David and Goliath situation. There's no doubt about that. I think the heart of the issue, though, is listen. I think all the premiers are trying to do the best that they can and whatever they think is right. So on and so forth. Really, I know you and I agree on this. The problem is we've got no federal leadership right now. There's nothing. The parliament's not even. We're not even working. That the gang is not even in the house, if you know what I mean. And as a result, this stuff, by the way, shouldn't be dealt with at a provincial level. This should be dealt with at a federal level, I believe. And we should definitely, no doubt, have a coalition, and these provinces need to come together through the federal government in order to negotiate this stuff. But that's not even possible right now. And I actually really like Poilievre's video that he released yesterday, saying, listen, he had outlined the kinds of things that we should immediately do, recall the parliament, and so on and so forth. None of that's been done, and that's really disappointing, I think.
It is. It is. And I want to just, let's shine a light on Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith in Alberta has done no threats of Trudeau. Of Trump. She sat down. She's had conversations with, different senators, different states. They're having conversation. There's no threats involved. So, you think about the difference in reaction from Danielle Smith. Oil and gas, a big deal to the U.S. She knows that. The U.S. knows that. They're going to work something out, and I think it's going to be a deal that is relatively fair. And then you look at Ford's reaction to it. I can't help but think that this is Ford trying to be a bigger deal than he actually is. He's trying to, and I get that he's trying to be bold and say, I'm here for you, Ontarians. I'm here for you, Canada. But ultimately, it's much ado. It's like bravado. There's no point. That's my point. That's my view of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's a very difficult spot to be in for them. I think no doubt about it. It's interesting. I think we need that federal leadership, and we need that person that's going to bring this together in order to have a sensible discussion, conversation, negotiation, and that typically happens at the federal level. So it's very fascinating. And now we're about to enter. I mean, today is day one, and I just did a market update on my YouTube channel because I kind of wanted to mark this day in history a little bit, because we don't know where this is going to go, Patrick. I mean, we have our thoughts, you have your thoughts, I have my thoughts, and the experts have their thoughts, and so on and so forth. But we don't really know where this is going to go. And as a result, it's going to be very, very interesting in the next couple weeks, couple months, and maybe even a couple of years in terms of what happens. This could be a good thing. There's many good things that can come from this for Canada, I believe. I choose to believe that. Maybe rose-colored glasses, but there's no doubt there could be some good things that'll come from this. And I hope that, things like interprovincial trade, those barriers coming down, bringing some of these critical resources to market, getting more customers than just the US as a trading partner. Let's expand. These are all very sensible business strategies, Patrick, that you and I as business owners, we wouldn't put all our eggs in one customer's basket. We would never do that. It doesn't make any sense, but that's what Canada's done.
Well, and I agree, is that, we put all our eggs in one basket. I think I want to go back a little bit to Ford, because there were some things that Ford said that I think were really great. He talked about, Can-Am or Am-Can or whatever, but coming together even tighter to be, bigger, bolder, more effective, more efficient, more all of the things that we want to be in an economy between the US and Canada. That's great. But he added, again, all those threats at the end of that conversation, and it's just not appropriate. So what does this all mean? I mean, why are we having this conversation? Because, we're here, the Real Estate Investment Network, we are kind of focused on real estate, but ultimately, we're one of the few in the industry that really understand the impact of these kinds of things on the economy, which has an impact on our real estate, which has an impact on interest rates, which has an impact on job growth, which supports real estate. So there's a lot of things that are going on that, I think we need to, take a little bit of time to wrap, our arms around this conversation to say, well, what does it mean to real estate investors? That's, for us, that's really critical. And so as we go through this, we're already starting to see where I was a little bit wrong in terms of the money printing. I thought we would be somewhere, second quarter before they started printing, but now quietly they've been already doing it for a couple of months. We have a slide to show that, where they've actually started the whole money supply thing again, pumping money into the economy. As we know, and we've said many times, everybody thinks that assets are appreciating, and tough to wrap our mind around, but it's really our dollar devaluing. We've talked about that many times.
So and just so everyone realizes, Patrick, just to draw the correlation, because they may not know, is the more money that's printed, the faster the dollar gets devalued, right? Like there's a direct correlation there. And there was a ton of money printing through COVID, but it all started in '08, and then it continued after '08, and then it just went nuts during COVID. You could see that in the chart here in terms of look at these numbers. Then they kind of had started bringing it back, and they haven't even brought it back to zero, Patrick. And now they're back on the offense with money supply again.
And the thing about it is they've done it very, very quietly. So I think what we're going to start to see now. So number one, real estate investors, again, this is a great opportunity to start investing in hard asset, those stores of value, real estate being one of them. We've talked last show, we talked about the impact on gold. We look at something a little bit more risky in terms of Bitcoin, and all very volatile because of what's going on. But those are where the opportunities live. We want to actually, we can buy into that volatility. So what does it mean to real estate? I think we've talked about this before, is that certain property types, we've said very clearly that single family detached is a strong, strong investment opportunity, given that they're not building more of it, given that interest rates are going to start coming down again. And it's the game has changed. And certainly as we sit here.
Let's just, Patrick, I'm just going to jump in because you're saying like a ton of great things here. Now, we have a couple slides I want to show with this. So, like, if you look at new construction, Patrick, this is what you're talking about here. You can see in this graph of new construction. Construction is actually, in general, still quite strong if you compare it to our historical average. But single family homes are down to record lows. And if you fast forward, and I said this in my my market update like literally an hour ago, and I was saying on this live update that that's the beauty about real estate. You can see these trends coming from very far away. It's like a big freight train coming, and you can either choose to get in front of that freight train if you think it's positive, or get out of the way if you think it's negative. And this is the kind of thing. There is no doubt, Patrick, like there is no doubt that in 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, there's going to be a massive issue with not enough single family homes. That is a guarantee going to happen. And those asset values of those types of properties will go up disproportionately to the market because of that. That's a good thing for us real estate investors, isn't it, Pat?
Well, I don't know if we would. Yeah, yes. I mean, I don't even. It's a good thing. It's not a good thing.
It's a good thing if you own it, bro. It's a good thing if you own it.
Because what is our job, as investors? What we're trying to do is protect our wealth, to actually grow our wealth, and we're looking at real estate in order to do that. Sadly, the reason it's happening is not good, and that's the frustrating part of all of it. So this is as much about wealth preservation as it is about wealth growth. And then ultimately, this is a result of what's going on in the instability of the economy. And so when we look at what's happening with banks being at risk and reserves fund growing, I mean, ultimately, we're going to see this has changed. I mean, what's happening, and it's not even we can look a year ahead, or we have to look in probably 6-month increments because things are changing.
Right. I wouldn't even say you can look 6 months right now, Patrick. I think right now we got to get through the next like 2-3 months to see kind of where it lands and where it settles at. I'll give you my view. That's what I'm thinking, is because there's a lot of people that are making bad decisions right now because they're trying to see too far into the future. And actually, I got to say, Patrick, actually, there's two things that are really scary. It's actually, there's two things that provide stability, and there's usually one thing that is quite scary. The midterm is usually quite scary in terms of like what's going to happen a year out, what's going to happen 18 months out, what's going to happen 8 months, 6 months out. That's the middle term. The short term, the next month or two or three, you can pretty much nail that. And in the long term, if you have a long enough view on the real estate market, you're going to nail that one too. It's that middle term where people live. I find that people get quite afraid of that. And I think they have to do one of two things: either bring in their view a little closer. And as you and I often say, I think you taught me this term, which is fantastic, which is when in doubt, zoom out, which is look a little further into the future, and it'll settle you down. I think that's some wise words for real estate investors, given March 4th, tariffs are on. It's scary.
Yeah, you do have to look into the long term and realize that there is lag effect. These tariff wars aren't going to eat us up. They're not going to bite us today, but in the future, if things unfold the way they appear to be unfolding, yes, 100%, we're going to feel the discomfort of all of that. I mean, the risks are huge in terms of if they do, in fact, if Ford does, in fact, all of a sudden flip the switch and cut off power to some states in the US, I mean, crazy what he would even threaten that. And then you look at tariffs on the raw goods that we are shipping. I mean, it's going to come back to bite us in terms of job losses. I mean, that will be huge if these things go through. I'm somewhat optimistic that it's just bravado and he's making these calls, but it may not be. We just don't know. And I don't want to step over it. As we came into the show, we talked about the potential of World War III. I mean, you can't minimize the fight that Trump had with Zelensky. I mean, everybody said, if you watch the
What
whole
happened there? What happened there? Let's dig into it, Patrick, because I watched parts of it, but I'm fascinated. What happened? Take me through it.
Well, it's a big conversation. As much as we think it's about Zelensky and Trump, it really is about NATO. It is about the broken agreements, depending on what narrative you want to run into, that NATO was always said, we're not going to move closer and we're not going to go into Russia. But they keep moving the bar. Goes back, there's a lot of history around it. And this isn't to say Russia's right and Ukraine's wrong. I've got no view of that. Really, I don't. I sometimes think, Zelensky's an idiot and it's his fault and then it's Putin. I mean, forget about all of that. The reality of it is right now what's happening, and you just had the president say it out loud to Zelensky in that meeting. And you have to watch the whole thing. A lot of people are focused on the last 10 minutes of that meeting when they ultimately got up and walked out. If you watch the whole thing, there's a lot of conversation. And Zelensky is arrogant. He is like thinking that he's got cards to play. I mean, Trump actually said, you got no cards, dude. I mean, it was a real insight into how these meetings go. The point is that what it ultimately is about, and you just saw it happen, they all went into their meetings in wherever it was, Europe, and the U.S. didn't show up. If the U.S. pulls out of NATO, it's game over. Like, you just have to imagine that
Listen, I got to ask you this question. Okay? Do you, I think I think the whole damn thing was manufactured.
You think it's
I don't,
maybe.
Dude, there is no flipping way that they would I mean,
Zelensky,
I don't know.
But
It seems so I just think, wow, that's got to be orchestrated.
I've watched some of the narrative of, former generals in the U.S., like two of them that I follow along, and that wasn't orchestrated, is what they're saying. It was Zelensky actually was the one who said, I want the press in this meeting, because he thought it was going to go a totally different direction. And then when J.D. Vance and Trump pushed back, that was not part of his plan, of Zelensky's plan. So I don't know what to say about it. The reality of it is that I think we have to take it as real. We would be naive to think that this isn't going to have an impact on us should things go forward. We're going to know literally as we're doing this show, they're in more meetings. Trump's doing more talking. And I mean, Trump is Trump. I like a lot of things that he's doing. I don't like the way he's doing it. And, it's going to have an impact on us. I'm really disappointed with Ford's coming in and doing a threat to the U.S. It makes no sense. That's like Trudeau when he started, and that's the problem. I see Ford aligning with Trudeau, and there's just so little that Canada can really do. So if you like these episodes and you want to learn more about what's going on with real estate in Canada, investing in real estate, and understanding how to invest in real estate the right way, head on down to the descriptions below, follow those links.